I went from Rolls Royce Maserati to mom bringing me groceries. So I was painting a house and I had a meltdown, and I literally threw the brush down. I'm like, F this. And I cried a little bit. I got back up and I went out and bought 500 houses in that next run.
Welcome back to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. Today we have with us Rod Khleif. Rod's story is pretty incredible. He's built up a massive real estate empire with over 2,000 residential units under his belt, but lost $50 million in net worth during the 2008 crash, and he came back stronger. He's also the host of the famous Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast with over 17 million downloads. Welcome to our show, Rod.
Oh, thank you for having me. I think we're actually pushing 30 million downloads at this point. But so you
Beautiful.
have a dated bio, but you had to bring up the 50 million, didn't you? You just had to go there.
I had to go there. Because, It's all about resilience. It's all about our inner power that we hold. And you have achieved that in real life. And it's an honor to meet you and talk to you about it.
Oh, it's kind of you to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, let's start with that then, right? The 50 million that you lost in 2008. Sorry?
Yeah, well, let's if you don't mind, I'll go back a little further just to kind of give some give some context to it. So, as I was just mentioning to you before we started recording, I have lived in Israel, and I was born in Holland and immigrated when I was 6 years old with my mother, Zwancha, and my brother Albert. And we ended up in Denver, Colorado, and we really struggled initially. I remember eating expired food. We shopped at an expired food store and drinking powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. And trust me, it sounds better than it is. And wearing clothes from the Salvation Army and the Goodwill all the way through junior high school till I finally lied about my age when I was 14 and got a job at Burger King flipping burgers so I could buy my own clothes finally. And I'm sure you've got listeners that had it harder than I did, or maybe even have it harder now with all the economic uncertainty. But I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And we always had a house full of kids. But with her babysitting money, she was a bit of an entrepreneur with no formal education. She invested in the stock market successfully, but she also invested in real estate. And her first real estate acquisition was a house right across the street that she bought when I was about 14 for about $30,000. And then when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep. And I'm like, what? You made 20 grand? This is when 20 grand was a lot of money, just to give you some context. But you made 20 grand? You didn't do anything? Screw college. I'm getting into real estate. So I got into real estate. Well, my first year in real estate, I made about 8 grand. My second year, I made about 10 grand. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some pretty decent change. And so what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I met a guy. I was actually dating his daughter, and I actually went to work for him. That taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology, how really 80 to 90% of your success in anything is your mindset and psychology. Yes. And fast forward to today, like you said, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term. I own thousands of apartment units now. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And my head got so big, I could barely fit it through a door. I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God or Allah or whatever you believe will give you a nice little smackdown. Well, that was 2008. I lost 50 million conservatively in 2008 and 9. And so what I'm known for talking about on my podcast and at my events and things like that is really the mindset it took to have 50 million to lose in the first place. But more importantly, maybe, is what it took to recover from that. And those strategies that I utilize, candidly, are the same strategies someone should use to get started. So if you're listening, if we get into that, I think those strategies might help those that want to get started. So
please.
Happy to go. Okay, yes. All right. Well, let's go. Let's get into it then. So
it's all about strategies, mindset here on this show. So
okay, perfect.
If we can get someone a win, let's go.
Oh, let's do it. So I'm going to give you a sequence of events. So when I lost everything, I recognized that I had to reassociate with my goals again. I hid under a rock for a couple of months, feeling sorry for myself. But then I'm like, okay, I got to pick myself back up. And if you come to one of my boot camps, I do virtual boot camps regularly, the first thing we do is goal setting on steroids. Because how do you get anything if you don't know what it is? You've got to figure out what it is you want, and more importantly, why you want it. And so that's the first thing we do at any one of my events. And because what you have to do is you have to create what Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich calls a burning desire. You got to want it, okay? You have to have hunger, because that's the only way you push through fear and limiting beliefs. Or maybe you're comfortable. And we all know the comfort zone is a nice warm place, and we also know nothing freaking grows there, right? So you've got to get uncomfortable to make things happen for yourself. And so you've got to create that burning desire, that hunger to push through that fear, to push through those limiting beliefs, to create the life you want and deserve. And so it starts with goal setting. And then the next piece, Shahid, is you've got to make a decision. And I don't mean dipping your toe in the water. I don't mean 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean, you make a decision. It is done, okay? It's just done. And, once you make that decision, then you're committed. And then you're like a train on a track. And, if you're not committed and you don't make a firm decision, you're going to get knocked off track. And, a great example of a decision that I love to use is if you're going to attack the island, you burn your ships because you're taking their ships home. I mean, it's done. Okay, it's just done. And so, motivation will get you started, but you've got to be committed to keep going. And then the next piece is you got to take that first step. I made that decision when that I had to get up and get going again. And if you haven't started yet and you want to create that life of your dreams, you got to make that decision that, enough is enough, and sometimes it requires leverage. Sometimes it requires disgust to make that decision. I've been there before too, where I've just been disgusted and said enough is enough. In fact, I'll give you a great example of that. Back, and I don't hardly ever talk about this, so this will be unusual for me to talk about publicly, but back in my early 20s, I lost everything for the first time. And I had a Rolls Royce, I had a Maserati, I was living large. People thought I was, wealthy. Actually, my neighbors thought I was a drug dealer. I was just kicking ass in real estate, but they thought I was a drug dealer. And I know they did, but I lost everything, okay? And I had my house foreclosed on. And I remember that my mom, and I had to paint houses to have enough money to eat, okay? So that's how bad it got, okay? From $1 million house, Rolls Royce, Maserati, all that. I had a Maserati, and I remember my mom bringing me a bag of groceries because she felt bad for me, okay? I went from Rolls Royce, Maserati to mom bringing me groceries. So I was painting a house and I had a meltdown. And I literally threw the brush down. I'm like, F this. And I cried a little bit. I got back up and I went out and bought 500 houses in that next run. But disgust can be a very powerful motivator. But you got to make that decision. The next piece is you got to take that first step. Dr. Martin Luther King says you take that first step in faith, the next step will be revealed. You don't have to see the whole journey, especially those of you that are analytical, right? You don't have to see the whole path. A great analogy for this is you can drive all the way across the United States at night with your headlight only seeing 50 feet in front of you, and you'll make it. You might have some obstacles, but other people have done it before you. It's the same way with this or any business, but you got to take that first step. Lao Tzu said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So that was the next piece. Were you going to interject something?
No, go ahead. I want to hear
Okay. So, and here's the thing. A lot of people, they don't take action because they fear failure. And I'm going to tell you, if this is you, don't fear failure. Okay, I call my failures seminars, okay? That was a $50 million, it was an expensive freaking seminar, but it was a seminar because it's only a failure if you don't get back up or you don't get the lesson, right? And I've had, everybody's had tons of these seminars, but don't fear failure, fear regret. There was this nurse in Australia, Shahid, that was a hospice nurse, and her name was Bronnie Ware, and she asked patients a question. And the people that were dying, she asked them a question. She said, do you have any regrets? And she even wrote a book about it. It's like The 5 Regrets of Dying. It's a bestseller, something like that it's titled. And the number one regret was not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life, not doing what I know I'm capable of. I can't think of anything worse than fear that. Don't fear failing. I'll tell you, I have started, a lot of people don't know this, I've started 29 businesses so far in my career. I was shocked when I got the count on that. Several worth tens of millions of dollars. Most were spectacular flaming seminars, okay? Because we fail our way to success. We're going to talk about failure a little more in a minute. Yeah. The next piece let's talk about is fear. everybody feels fear. The most successful people on the planet feel fear. Now, some of us entrepreneurs, we call it stress, but it's fear. And, so what is fear? Is it F everything and run? That's what most people do, okay? I'm going to tell you, I hope you look at it as the fact that it's false evidence appearing real in most cases. These are acronyms that I like to use.
Yes.
But the one you need to adopt is face everything and rise. Because when you take massive action, if you're facing fear, it mitigates the fear. And so, but we all have it. So you just got to push through in spite of it. And once you push through to the other side, you're ecstatic because you know what you're capable of. So don't, just recognize we all have it. You just got to push through in spite of it. And the next piece is limiting beliefs. I've got a couple props for this one. I got to turn around to get them. Give me 1 second because they're funny. So when I immigrated to this country, I got thrown into school. I didn't speak English. Found out what bullies were for the first time. And then my mom, proud Dutch woman that she is, thought it'd be a great idea to send me to school in these wooden shoes. These are the actual freaking shoes. We found them in the house when we put her in assisted living. And these leather shorts that the Germans wear for Oktoberfest. So I got my ass kicked again, oh my God, it was like crack cocaine for the bullies. And then, then the bullies would chase me home from school and she'd chase them off with a fly swatter. So the next day, butt kicked again, and that coupled with this, this experience I had with this girl I had a crush on that she embarrassed me in front of some kids in school, that we all have this stuff. But I came up with this limiting belief that I wasn't good enough. I used to ask myself, how can I show them I'm good enough? Which of course presupposed that I wasn't. And see, here's the reason I bring this up. Is a lot of people have these limiting belief systems. And, I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not courageous enough. I'm not analytical enough. That was another one of mine. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money, whatever. And there's a reason the acronym for belief systems is BS. Because 99.9% of them are BS, but we believe they're real. And so if you have one of these that you're consciously aware of, anytime it pops up, drag it out into the daylight. Okay, look at it with your adult rational mind and recognize that it's BS, and it will slowly diminish and go away. But you got to consciously do this. I used to be afraid to raise my hand in front of 10 kids in a classroom, and now I speak in front of thousands of people a year, typically in my freaking flip-flops here, okay? So, I'm known for that. It's not a brand thing. It's because my feet hurt when I walk around for 3 days at a boot camp. But anyway, but you can diminish anything like that, a limiting belief like that, if you give it the energy it deserves.
Yes, yes.
The next thing I want to talk about is integrity. Recently on a podcast, I brought up this sham lawsuit that was brought against me like 20 years ago. And the attorney general at that time was running for governor. So he opened up an investigation of me. He had political aspirations. And I was completely exonerated. I was of any wrongdoing in that. But I learned a lesson, a really important lesson. Number one, you have a great contracts attorney, because that's what this was all about. And I was, like I said, I was completely exonerated when they saw how I did business. So that's the first piece. But the second, probably more important piece, is to operate with integrity. Okay, and integrity is my number one core value. And in fact, just recently I had this supposed investigative journalism article written about me. It's complete crap. I mean, there's nothing, a single bit of truth on it on this sham website trying to discredit me. It's probably a competitor or something. Can't even remember the name of it. But they try to make me look bad, with all sorts of BS claims. And so this stuff pops up every couple of years. And, I'm sure, once as big as you are, you probably get hate as well. But someone's got an axe to grind or something. But I'd like to turn that into a teaching opportunity for my students, and very rarely, but once in a while, we'll even see people commenting negatively about me online of their supposed experience with me. And, I've had over 15,300 people attend my boot camps, and I think we found 14 quasi-negative comments. So 15,000 attendees, 14 comments, and some of them weren't even that negative.
I want to. Go ahead.
Let me finish one thought on that. I'm almost done.
Yeah.
And even with that minuscule number of complaints, I take complaints very seriously, obviously, but we discovered like 99% of the time we look these people up and to contact them and say, hey, how can we make it right? We've never even done business with them. So, there's no record of them. And so they're likely competitors or nefarious ex-partner that I'm actually litigating with. with. But the bottom line, I just want to land the plane with this, is when you get into business, any business, this business or any business, you got to operate with integrity, and you got to get competent legal help with your business model. And like I said, integrity is our number one core value, and it should be yours as well. You do what's right even if it hurts, and that helps insulate you from stuff like that. But anyway, sorry, I wanted to finish my thought on that.
No, that's good. No, it's wonderful. I just came to mind in a recent experience. I went for breakfast at a breakfast place, and the moment I stepped into that place, Rod, I'm telling you, every aspect of that place was finely tuned for me to experience something different from all the, restaurants out there for breakfast. It felt different. So I sat down and I got the menu. It was a leather, artificial leather menu cover, really cool. And the menu inside just had incredible items on there, and everything was great. They were cleaning continuously. They were just really friendly, great experience, quick food, unreal for me. And I said, give me your card. I want to leave you guys a review, right? And I like to do that, as much as I can.
Right, of course.
And she goes, oh, that'll be so great. And she came running back, gave me the card. He goes, how was your experience, right? I goes, wonderful. And I pointed all these things out. He goes, you won't believe it. We still get negative reviews, right? So I and there was just a feedback I provided that there is just a conditioning of our mind too, right? Because if one individual is looking for what's wrong with the world, or we're looking for what they need to fix, or there's an issue with people or things, if that's what the programming is, if they're always looking for that, they're always going to be trying to search for that. And that's just not at a restaurant level. That's at their career and their family and their relationship and their business. They're doing more harm to themselves than they could ever imagine. If they kind of shift and start looking for the good in things, you'll be surprised how much more good you find.
Oh, that's so insightful, Shahid. I can't even tell you, because what you look for is what you get. And actually, that's the next topic I wanted to talk about, which is focus.
Sure, please.
Okay. Let's talk about focus for a minute, because focus is power. But whatever you focus on gets bigger, like you just said, positive or negative. I'll have people call me and say, "How do I get out of student loan debt?" I'm like, wrong question. How do you make so much money that debt's irrelevant? Is the right question, right? They asked Mother Teresa when she was alive if she was anti-war. And she replied and said, "No, I'm pro-peace." Yeah, I mean, you see the parallel, but whatever you focus on gets bigger. And I will tell you, the most successful people on the planet have the highest degree of focus. I don't know about you, but a lot of times, Rod will be sitting there watching Netflix or something, and I'll be scrolling on my social media, which is horrible for your focus, by the way, because your brain is making these micro decisions every split second. And I'll tell you another great example. So, I get excited about my 20 plus million downloads on my podcast. So I listen to two podcasts. I listen to Joe
Congratulations.
Rogan, and I listen. Yeah, thank you for that. But I listen to Joe Rogan and I listen to Tim Ferriss, and they get that a week on their show. So, just to give it to context. But I try to get both sides of the aisle. And on Tim Ferriss's show, he interviews the best of the best in the world. The best athletes, Michael Phelps, the swimmer, NBA, NFL players, actors like Jamie Foxx, Ed Norton, Hugh Jackman, Arnold, billionaires like Ray Dalio, heads of the biggest companies in the world like Zuckerberg. And what he does is he deconstructs their success. It's very intellectual and interesting conversation. But I started to hear a pattern, Shahid. They almost all meditate. What does meditation enhance?
Yes.
Focus.
That's part of our framework as well. Meditation is part of it.
Focus is and it enhances your focus. And so anyway, so that's focus. The next piece really, particularly, honestly, I shouldn't say particularly, I think it applies to everything, is to play to your strengths. But it definitely applies in the multifamily space, which is what I teach. And because it's a team sport, you're not going to buy these 100-unit apartment complexes or 400-unit apartment complexes by yourself. You can, I bought 2,000 houses mostly by myself. I had my brothers involved, and I had employees and stuff like that, but it was mostly me. And you're not going to do that in the space that I'm in now, which is multifamily. But you got to play to your strengths. Your strengths are your greatest assets. Okay, don't try to build your weaknesses, because here's why: when you're playing to your strengths, first of all, you love what you're doing because you're good at it. Okay. okay? And you never really work another day of your life when you're playing to your strengths.
Yes.
Second thing is, so you're in the quan or the zone, like Jerry Maguire talks about. You're in the zone when you're playing to your strengths. But the second thing is, you're passionate. Like I mean, you can probably feel my passion. I freaking love what I do, and passion is the fuel, and passion always gives you the ability to influence. Okay, and if you're going to get into any business, you got to get into something you love, so you're passionate, so you can influence people to invest with you, to work with you, to sell to you. So play to your strengths, super important, and passion also breeds innovation. It breeds creativity. And when you hit a speed bump, if you're passionate about it, it's just a speed bump. It's not going to be a wall that stops you. You're going to keep going because you love what it is you're doing. So, that's an important piece. Do what you enjoy and play to your strengths.
Passion also has a direct effect on the level of love you feel in your heart, for example. A lot of macho guys might say, oh, love, we talk about love, but I was one of them before, but now for me, love is a very different meaning. It's not a surface level type of meaning that you read in a card or something, but it's a very deep sense of oneness to everything. And that passion, there's something so powerful about that passion that elevates that love in your body, where it just permeates everything that you interact with. Well, right?
I completely agree, and I want to end this get off my soapbox talking about gratitude. But before I do that, I gotta, because it ties into what you just said, gratitude. But let's talk about peer group for a minute. Because I will tell you, and you've heard this before, you are the sum total of people you hang out with. I mean, you show me your 3 best friends, I'll show you who you are in your relationships, your health, your happiness, and definitely your finances. And who you hang out with is who you become. But here's the problem. Most people will default to a peer group that they went to school with or that they work with. And very often that group will have limiting beliefs or fears, or they may fear losing you. They may fear feeling rejected if you succeed. And sometimes it's family. And so I'll tell you, love your family, but proactive, right? Love your family, but proactively choose your peers. And, when I was losing everything in 2008 and 2009, I was in Tony Robbins' Platinum Partnership, okay? High level, that's his very high level mastermind. It was like $100,000 at the time. It's even more than that now. And I was around people that were killing it in that crash while I was losing everything, and they were killing it. And they're like, get up, you puss, 50 million, schmillion, go make something happen. That's who you want to be around, is people that are making things happen, because a rising tide lifts all ships. Can I brag for a minute? I want to brag for a minute.
Yeah, please.
So, I have a coaching program. They're called my Warriors. Okay, and I've been teaching for about a little over 7 years. They own 260,000 units that we're aware of. I think it's closer to 300. Candidly, we just can't keep track anymore. But we know it's over 260,000 multifamily units. They own thousands of self-storage units, senior housing, storage. No, not together. No, individually. We count. We ask them, how many deals are you in?
Oh, in the community. I got it.
Yeah, in the community. Yeah. But under my tutelage, these are the results. They're just spectacular. And it's because of mindset. They take action. Yeah, I give them the tools and everything at my boot camps and in my program, but they actually do it because we spend so much time talking about actually taking action, and not just sitting there and thinking about it and analyzing it, and yes, I made the A long on purpose.
I got it.
But that's the power of a peer group, okay? And most of those deals were done between warriors. Yeah, the right peer group, exactly. Thank you. That most of those deals were done between warriors. So if you're listening to this, get around people that want more out of life. I will tell you, I created my own mastermind a few years ago. There's probably 40, 50 billion in assets in there. It became too much work. I was herding cats trying to get them to show up and stuff. But it was a huge mastermind. And I set it up so that I could be around people that thought what I thought was hard was easy. And that's who you want to be around. People that think what you think is hard is easy. That's And so that's the power of a peer group, because that rising tide lifts all ships. So and back to problems. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me in my situation, doing what I'm doing, and how you mentioned about the people that were in your past and that community, that group that you had, or your environment, a small percentage, I would say 40% of the people I knew from back then, because they're still close with me and they're around this type of material, they're seeing people like yourself, I'm talking to them, and the stuff that you're saying, it connects with what I'm seeing, and then more and more success stories are saying similar things. They started taking it to heart. They started changing the way they think, their patterns. Do you know what I mean? Like, they shifted, right? Majority didn't, so I don't hang out with them, right? It's a true fact is I'm not around in their lives, but the ones I do are very similar.
As you grow, you will lose people, and it's sad. I mean, it's sad.
Yeah.
You will lose people. They fall away. I think we could talk about energy and vibrating at different energies. But we could talk about energies, how you vibrate at a different energy, and you lose people that stay at a lower energy.
You're not the vibe. You're not the vibe.
That's it. And it's sad, but it's reality. Some people just don't. They give up on life. They're happy being comfortable or happy being miserable sometimes. But so the just a couple more quick things.
Sure.
One is problems and failure. We talked about failing our way to success. But here's the thing: don't fear problems. Okay, problems are feedback. Like when I do one of my boot camps. Can I do a quick plug for my boot camp? Is that all right?
Yes, of course. It's all about you. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. So I do these boot camps every couple of months. I don't know when this will air, but there'll be one coming up in the very near future. I do virtually, mostly right here in my studio.
Probably 8 weeks or so from now.
8 weeks, yeah. So it'll be virtual, and give me a word that they can use to get a great deal.
Super.
On it. What's a word they should? Super. Okay. So if you go to, by the way, I forgot to mention this. If you haven't done your goals recently, go to rodslinks.com, rods plural, links plural.com. And at the bottom of that link tree, that's got all my free resources. My bootcamp site is there and free books that are fantastic. But at the bottom is my goal setting workshop. Even if you're not interested in multifamily, do the goal setting. Like people spend more time planning a birthday party than they do designing their lives. That's designing your life. Have your spouse do it. If your kid's over 10 years old, have them do it. Spend an hour and it will massively impact your life. So it's in rodslinks.com. Go there and do that goal setting workshop. But my bootcamp site is there. I do a virtual boot camp. It's 2 days. I don't sell anything there. Nothing being sold. And you'll leave so juiced you'll be coming out of your skin. It's always on a weekend. And if you use the code SUPER, you can come for $47. Okay? For 2 days of training for $47.
Virtual.
And you get about $3,000 worth of bonuses. Yes. I mean, you get my deal evaluator software.
Perfect.
You get my document library. You get a free course. Yeah, for $47. So no excuses. Oh, my pleasure.
No excuses.
So use the code
thank
SUPER.
You for that, Rod.
Oh, no, you'll love it. I can tell you, I told you about my complaints. I've had over 15,300 people attend my boot camps, and we've had 14 quasi-complaints. Most of them we can't even track back to ever having done business with us. So, people rave about my events. But anyway.
Perfect.
So I told you I wanted to talk about gratitude. And now some of you may tune out when we're talking about this foofy stuff, but trust me, it'd be a big mistake, okay? Because what I'm gonna share with you is how I had 50 million to lose and how I got it back. So ignore this at your peril, okay? So gratitude is the most important foundational emotion we have available to us. It strengthens our immune system. It lowers our blood pressure. It brings us closer to our spirituality, and it heals, and it's how we manifest everything we want into our lives. Okay, so most mornings I will sit on my recliner in one of my other buildings here at my compound, and I've got my vision board sitting next to me, and I will just do gratitude for the people I love, for my foundation, for my students, my warriors. And then I'll do gratitude for the things that I want as if I already have them. And I've gotten emotional being grateful for things I don't even have yet. And I know I lost some of you on that, but this is how I had 50 million to lose and how I got it back. So again, just ignore it at your peril. But when you do that, that's how you manifest everything you want in life, is through that process. You could call it prayer if you like. It's pretty much the same thing. You could call it that.
Alignment, but that's, prayer, whatever.
That's it. That's right. That's right. And the last piece is I want to share a story. And so when I immigrated, I moved to Denver, but I knew I wanted to live on the beach. And my dad worked for Continental Airlines, so we flew to Hawaii, and I got to see what the beach was like. So for 20 years, I would visualize the palm trees and the sand and the surf. And 20 years later, I built this mansion on the beach here in Sarasota. And I mean, just to describe this place, I'll brag for just a second. There was a beach on one side. There were boats on boat lifts on the backside. So it was sliced through an island. It was called a Gulf to Bay lot. The house was 10,000 square feet. There was a waterfall from the second floor balcony into the pool. You had to walk through the waterfall to get to the pool. Pool was in magazines. Big spiral staircase up through the middle of the house. Wine cellar, elevator. I'll land the plane with this. On the second floor, I had aquariums built around the spiral staircase that cost me almost $200,000. So this gives you an idea of the house. I mean, spectacular.
Amazing.
Well, I worked for that thing for 20 years. 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night. It's changing colors. It had fiber optic lighting. And I'm looking up at this testament to my ego, which is really what it was. Yep. It was to prove to the world I was good enough. I mean, if that didn't do it, forget it. Okay.
What the hell?
My family's inside sleeping. I had all the toys, the Mercedes and the nice cars and the boats and the jet skis. And I'm looking up at this thing 2 months after I moved in, and I got depressed. And I don't mean a little depressed. I was like, holy crap, depressed. I mean, it was like really overwhelming feeling of depression. And when I look back on it, Shahid, I realized there were three things happening. The first thing was you should never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined up behind it. Like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. And I didn't have a vision for the future. I didn't know what I was going to do next. Second thing is, it's never about the goals. You need the goals to create that burning desire and that hunger. But like they say, the happiest days of a boat owner's life, the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat, okay? And so it's never about the goals. You need them, but happiness comes from progress and growth.
Yeah.
And so if you go do my goal setting workshop at Rod's links at the bottom there, at the end I do a weekly planning process, about 15 minutes. And one of the pieces, and that's how I managed two very large companies at the same time with that planning process. But at the one of the pieces of that is celebrating anything you got done the previous week consciously, because you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have delays. But if you did anything and you acknowledge it, you'll be happy. So again, happiness is progress.
Yeah.
But the big thing, Shahid, was I was totally focused on me. Rod, show the world I'm good enough, blah, blah, blah. But that's the year I met Tony Robbins, okay? I was 40 years old. I went and saw him speak live, and I spent another 20 years following him around the planet. But I discovered that he fed families for the holidays. And I'm like, what a concept, do something for someone else. I'm embarrassed to say I had to be 40 to get that memo. But I called my brother because I was going to go visit him in Denver for Thanksgiving. And I said, bro, let's feed 5 families. Let's have some fun. So he called his church, found 5 families that really needed help. And we delivered the food, and we had frozen turkeys and toys for their kids if they had them. And this third family changed my life, Shahid. We go up to the door, and this woman is in a 1-bedroom shack with 5 kids, Hispanic woman. She comes out on the porch, and she sees all this stuff, and she starts crying. Her kids come out. 2 of the older ones start crying. I start crying, and I'm hooked. And now, please, I am not bragging with this, and don't tune out if you're listening, because this is probably the most important thing I've said the whole time we've talked, okay? Since then, I have fed 150,000 children for the holidays, okay? I've done tens of thousands of backpacks for at-risk children locally here with school supplies. In fact, we just ordered 2,000 for August a couple weeks ago. I've done thousands and thousands of teddy bears to local police departments for their officers to keep in their vehicles if they encounter a child that's been in a traumatic situation. Now, again, I'm not bragging with this. Tony Robbins likes to call it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. Achievement's a science. If you want to learn multifamily, get your butt to my boot camp. I'll give you the blueprint. You just got to go do it. But fulfillment is an art. You got to figure out what juices you. For me, it's children and the elderly. That's what makes me happy, is helping children and the elderly. And maybe for you it's something around nature or the environment. Maybe it's animals. Whatever it is, give back right now. Don't say to yourself, "Well, you had money, that's why you gave back." No, you want the money? Give back now. That's how you get it faster.
Yeah.
Because power moves to those who serve. So find something you're passionate about and start giving right now. If you don't have the money, give of your time. Because then success will be inevitable, and you'll be fulfilled.
Leadership.
Rather than that's it.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. It was amazing having you on the show here and talking to you and hearing what you're saying. I do appreciate your energy, what you're doing for other people and how you're using this power we have within that every human being has, that we're just sitting on it and not realizing how powerful we really are to make things happen. And you are an example of that, coming on these shows, going on your podcast tour to bring this awareness to more and more people, that if they just shift that from outside and trying to point and blame and all that, and just bring it to themselves and start working on themselves and internal world, and just take the precision action that they need, the direction that they need from people that already been there.
Thank you, my friend. I've enjoyed it.